Hello Electroheads, behind me is the iconic Hyundai Ioniq 5 and I spent the past 2 weeks with it and overall it's been a positive experience. However, the first drive, maybe not so much, which I will get into very shortly. But first, if you don't know much about the Hyundai Ioniq 5, let's take a look around. Originally released back in 2021, Hyundai brought out the big guns with this family skewered crossover SUV equipped with comfort, range, and great tech. And through the years, there's been updates to fend off the competition, plus the introduction of the hot hatch Ioniq 5N, not to be confused with the latest N-line trim. The 5N is designed for high performance and racer speeds, and now the latest and greatest of the standard Ioniq 5 range is here. It's available in 5 trims here in the UK. The Ioniq 5 Advance is the base trim with 19-inch wheels and 12.3-inch touchscreen as standard, followed by Premium that adds more features and tech like LED headlights with intelligent front lighting, electric tailgate, V2L or vehicle to load, and a sliding center console. Next is the N-line for a sportier, more performance-oriented trim with a step up to 20-inch alloy wheels and rear privacy glass. The ultimate trim comes with a head-up display, inside rear view mirror, upgraded speakers, ventilated front seats, and finally, the one I have today, which is the N-line S, which has a vision roof, blind spot monitoring, smart parking assist, and a fancy Alcantara and leather trim. All come with a heat pump as standard. Previously, there was a 58 kWh and a 73 kWh battery available, but now they've upgraded the standard range battery to 63 kWh and 84 kWh for the long range battery. The smaller battery is only available for the first 2 trims, and rear-wheel drive is available for all models, but all-wheel drive is available from the N-line upwards, with 2 or 3 powertrains available depending on what trim you go for. Hyundai kindly loaned me this Ioniq 5 N-Line S 84 kWh, 325 PS all-wheel drive version. So this is the tippy top of what you can get. And it does come in at around £55,000, which yes, it's a lot of money, but I was really excited to try it because admittedly, I've never been behind the wheel of one of these before and it's about time. And so with me driving around for Christmas, seeing lots of friends and family, it was the perfect opportunity to get some long range driving in. The first thing that struck me actually with the Ioniq 5 is actually just how big this vehicle is. Now it certainly is designed as a family SUV to fit in all the bags, all the family, and that really is the case. I don't know what I was expecting, but I think just from the pictures, because it is quite boxy, I sort of just likened it to a bit more of something like a Hyundai, which I know is absolutely not the case because this does share the same platform as the EV6, the EGMP. So of course it's going to be a similar size, and the Kia EV6 is pretty big too, but that is what really struck me first and foremost. It will come as no surprise that it is so spacious in this vehicle due to its dimensions, both in the front and for the passengers in the rear. And thanks to that flat floor, because of the battery, you're able to have lots of footroom. And what I really like about this as well is the fact that if you move the parcel shelf back, you're actually able to recline the back passenger seats. So your passengers can be in a fully relaxed mode for a very long car trip. Big thumbs up. So let's talk boot space. Inside here, we have 520 litres, which increases up to 1,580 litres with the second row seats fully folded. There's also an extra 100 litres of storage space in here, where you can see I've quite messily kept my 3-pin charging cable. I'm actually going to talk to you about charging shortly, so hold out for that. And the second row seats offer extra flexibility by being able to slide forward up to 135mm and fold in a 6:4 ratio. So this has been perfect for packing my luggage away for the week, including all the presents, drinks, extra food, supplies for the family. And if I pull this lever here, there's also a frunk. Now, as I have the all-wheel drive version, you'll see here that I have 24 litres of storage, so it's pretty piddly. I mean, you could probably put your cables in here. However, if you go down to the rear-wheel drive version, then you'll be able to get 57 litres in the frunk. Charging with the Ioniq 5 is not to be sniffed at thanks to its 800-volt charging capacity, which basically means that it's super fast to charge up. So with a bigger battery, it is a max capacity of 260 kilowatts for a charge, which 10 to 80% will take you 18 minutes. But let's talk on average. I mean, generally people maybe will use like a 50 kilowatt charger if they're out and about, which takes you about an hour or so to get from 10 to 80%. The smaller battery can take up to 190 kilowatts of charge, which Because it's a smaller battery, actually the charging time 10 to 80% doesn't change. It's still 18 minutes because it's smaller capacity, but both preconditioning and heat pump comes as standard with the Ioniq 5. So that means that you can get your battery prepped and in primed position to be able to charge as best as it can and as quick as it can. And also it means that heating the car, it does it in a much more efficient way. Now here's a really fun charging bit of info for you. So I asked Hyundai to make sure that they included a 3-pin charging cable so that I'm able to plug this car into my parents' garage whilst I'm sat up in the house, eating turkey and having a good time over Christmas. Now it did take a while to charge up, obviously because it's a small amount of current coming through. So I would recommend obviously getting a home charger if you do have a drive or a garage, but because my dad doesn't, I was able to use a 3-pin plug instead. And I was able to charge this bad boy from 20% to 100% for the small cost of £16.52. Now, if I was to charge this car from 0 to 100, we estimated that probably be about £23 in total. So you really can charge these cars up very cheaply, and that's about 300 miles of range that I'm able to get as well, according to HERE, of course, but we will talk about range shortly. All right, let's let's talk real world range and efficiency, because I know this is a really important one. My drive from London down to Bath to come and see family and friends is just under 100 miles. Okay, so I started driving with 82% charge, and when I arrived, I had 20% charge left. So yeah, that's about 60% charge, just under 100 miles. I know I'm driving in cold weather. It's about 4 degrees Celsius at the moment. I know that the car was packed with lots of bags, but it was just me and my fiance, and my fiance, by the way, thanks everybody. But yeah, it was me and my fiance in the car, and so I just thought that there'd be a bit more. Actually, I thought that I'd have a bit more charge left by the end of it. I mean, I was driving on the motorway, but I drive really efficiently. I'm always in iPedal mode when I can. I don't speed off at the traffic lights. I would say I'm quite a conservative driver in that respect, more for comfort and ease rather than pushing the car to the limit. So yeah, I thought I'd have a bit more charge by the end of that, actually, particularly because this car does claim that it does 307 miles WLTP, but that is with the all-wheel drive version. Of course, remember, you can get more with the rear-wheel drive version with the bigger battery. And of course, the ranges that the car manufacturers give are from the most optimized settings, but because this car has a heat pump as well, I don't know, just thought I'd get a bit more, actually. But what about miles to the kilowatt? Because I think numbers do the talking. So I found with all my driving that at the moment, I'm getting 2.8 miles to the kilowatt hour. So that's, I mean, 3 miles to the kilowatt hour is where it's starting to like look okay. So this is on the cusp of being okay in terms of how many miles you can squeeze out the kilowatt hour. So yeah, interesting. Next up, I want to talk about the interior, because there's a lot of good things to talk about in here. So I've driven both short and long-legged passengers, and all of them have been singing the car's praises. It's really comfortable and it's really spacious. So I really can recommend this car to be able to house and seat 5 adults, no problem. And one thing I really noticed when having a full set of passengers in the back is this bad boy. So this is a digital rear view mirror. And why is this great? Well, firstly, obviously it's a cool bit of tech, isn't it? However, it's particularly good when you do have passengers in the back, because you know how with a mirror, usually if there's people sitting in the back, particularly in the middle, heads get in the way and your vision is obscured. Not with this. You can have a full set of people in the back, and I can see clearly everything that's behind me. In fact, visibility in this car is just really great. The parking is also so easy as well, thanks to having a more upgraded trim. You do get a mass amounts of views and cameras to see what you're doing when you're parking. You've got a 360 camera, it's bird's eye view. You've also got this kind of 3D kind of side-on view, so you can see all those blind spots. And it's really encouraging to have that when this car is such a big one. And just in terms of a long drive, this car is great because it's got loads of charge points so everyone can stay juiced up. There's wireless charging here for me to use. There's these amazing Bose speakers which have kept me entertained throughout my long drive. So yeah, this car really is. It's a big thumbs up. It is a lot of money, particular for this one, because it is about £55,000, but I'm really, really enjoying all the added features. So, like the EV6, the Ioniq 5 also comes with blind spot monitoring, which is available with the N-Line S trim, the one that I have today. I've been driving this car a lot, and I can say it is a squishy ride. Oh my goodness, the suspension on this car. Yeah, I mean, the London speed bumps have got nothing on this. Like, you can barely feel them. You're just sort of bouncing around with this vehicle. It's actually pretty crazy. I mean, this is what the car is made for. It's made to be comfortable. It's made for the long drives. It's made for the young children in the back, the driver up front, poor dad doing the taxi runs all the time. It's made to be comfortable and to keep you feeling as squishy and as safe as possible. I do personally prefer the EV6's driving feel. It just feels, I don't know, there's a bit more spice to the EV6. But anyway, if you would like to see my review on that car, then you can click the link right here. I cannot see, it is a blind corner. Another big plus for me is also that this car has 4 different levels of regen. So you've got the paddles on the back of the steering wheel here, which you're able to tweak to exactly how you want. So level 4, or I pedal, being the max amount of regen that you can do, which is 1 pedal driving, or 1 being the least. 0, you can just turn it completely off, but I don't know why you do that. I personally love driving with the max regen mode, I-pedal mode, because it means not only are you able to maybe eke out a little bit more juice as you're driving around town, get a bit more range, but also I just feel like you're a little bit more connected with the vehicle. Now, speaking of driving, I think it's time that I talk about the maybe not so fantastic experience that I had with this car. Let me set the scene. So I was driving home for Christmas. I had the car packed up. It was me and my fiance. The car was full of stuff, ready to get home. We left at about 7 o'clock, so it was dark out because I was trying to miss the Christmas traffic, and we thankfully did. So anyway, coming out of London, I was driving for about 45 minutes. And then when I finally got from a 50-mile-per-hour road to the first 70-mile-per-hour sign, I then started to accelerate to keep up with the traffic. And when I hit about 56 miles per hour, something really weird happened. The car started to sort of shunt. It started to almost like jump. And I looked down at the screen, and basically a sign for the traction control had turned on, and it was sort of blinking at me in the instrument cluster here. And it was really bizarre because not only was the car jumping, but it felt like I had lost control of the vehicle. Not ideal. It felt like it was almost sort of veering to the left a little bit, and unfortunately I was in the sort of outer lane that then turned into 3 lanes, so I suddenly was basically in the middle, not able to accelerate safely. So when I hit 56 and the car started doing this and it felt like I lost control, I obviously just took my foot off the accelerator and quickly indicated left to get into that left lane, into the slow lane, and I basically was like, okay, what's going on here? Tried to accelerate and it happened again, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to basically drive at 50 miles per hour along the motorway to get us home. It was really weird. So anyway, I got my fiance into detective mode, and he started searching up whatever he could about traction control. Now, this was about 10 minutes, and it felt like the longest 10 minutes of our lives, because bearing in mind, going about 50 on the motorway and lorries can do about 60 miles per hour, it wasn't really the best feeling in the world. Anyway, he managed to then find some random YouTube video that was able to explain there is a traction control button. So I went to press that button, it turned it off, and lo and behold, that did fix the problem. So I'm really pleased to say that I was able to drive us back without any more issues, but it was a pretty scary, like 20 minutes, I'd say, just trying to work this out. And so when I got home, I was like, right, that's really weird that that's happened. I wonder if that's happened to anyone else. Is it just me? So I looked it up, and lo and behold, there are other people I've seen on some forums that have had a similar issue, and they all describe the same sort of problem. There was actually somebody that captured a video of what was happening to them in real time. I'm really glad that they got that, because that's exactly what happened to me. Obviously I couldn't film that at the time because I was driving, and obviously we were just wondering if we were going to be okay, so filming wasn't our prerogative. So really interesting. I am yet to get to the bottom of exactly what has happened. I will say that I will be reaching out to Hyundai once the Christmas period is over, and I will be asking them exactly what that is all about, because it's scary. And I'm just really glad that nothing worse happened to me, to my partner, to the vehicle. So all of that to say, response from Hyundai incoming. We've got an answer. Hyundai were so great, they got that car straight over to the technical team to look at the issue, and it seems that they've resolved it, and that car has not done the same thing since, so that's a big thumbs up. So the issue seems to be actually something quite simple. It's probably down to the tyre size, so I'm just going to actually make sure I'm saying this correctly. So it seems the problem was an incorrect tyre size. Now, that means that created a different rolling radius, which then confused the system, as it was seeing one wheel with a different rotational speed, which is why the ESP was activated. So what the team did was they changed the tyre, and that seemed to resolve the issue. So that actually makes a lot of sense, because when I was accelerating, going from that like 50 to attempting to get up to 70 miles per hour, that's kind of where the main problem began. Then it continued to do so when I did try and kind of accelerate again to see if I could get up to a higher speed. So that does actually make a lot of sense. So that car must have had a slight difference in tyre size, which then confused the whole system. So it's a simple fix, thank goodness. And I guess if this does ever happen to you, hopefully not, then it might be down to your tyres, and know that you can also just turn off traction control as well, and you can get yourself safely to your destination. Well, despite this car giving me a bit less range than I would have liked, I have to say I have really enjoyed having this car for the past 2 weeks. It's been the perfect vehicle for my gallivanting around the UK, seeing friends, family, packing all those presents in, getting me back and forth. Now, bearing in mind, obviously, it was a shorter range than I'd hoped, but it's so quick to charge back up if you're using those bigger kilowatt chargers. Remember, 10 to 80% with the max kilowatt capacity in just 18 minutes. That's really impressive. It's been so great for carting people around. Everybody has talked about how much they've loved it. It's been so comfortable. It's so spacious in there. I can really see why a lot of people have opted in for the Ioniq 5. It continues to be a really competitive car in the market. Of course, the updates are always a really great thing to have, just to make sure that it is still in keeping with what we need with the times. But overall, yeah, I'm a fan, and I'm actually quite sad to give it back. I've really enjoyed having this. I've really enjoyed the freedom that having an EV can bring, at being able to charge up at such a cheap cost as well. But anyway, I digress. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this one, guys. Let me know down in the comments. If you've got an Ioniq 5, do you agree? Are there any little niggles that you want to talk about? Do you have any questions maybe that you want to know about the car? Then let me know down in the comments, and I'll make sure to do my best to answer them. And if you enjoyed this video, then please give it a big fat thumbs up. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're new here, and I'll see you for the next one.